How we view what Jesus did for us reveals the condition of our hearts. Luke 7:40, then Jesus answered his thoughts. Simon, he said to the Pharisee, I have something to say to you. Go ahead, teacher, Simon replied. Then Jesus told him this story. A man loaned money to two people, 500 pieces of silver to one and 50 pieces to the other. But neither of them could repay him, so he kindly forgave them both, canceling their debts. Who do you suppose loved him more after that? Simon answered, I suppose the one for whom he canceled the larger debt. That's right, Jesus said. If we think we are already pretty good people before we profess faith in Christ, then we will likely see little reason to worship him or serve him. If, however, we know that we were wretched and lost and poor and blind and naked when he found us and saved us, then we will be motivated to worship him and serve him. In Jesus' example, I doubt that the first person knew what a scoundrel they were before they were forgiven. It can be seen in how they treated those in need of forgiveness from him. Our knowledge of God informs our worship of God. What sorrow awaits you, Chorazin and Bethsaida, for if the miracles I did in you had been done at wicked Tyre and Sidon, their people would have repented long ago of their sins. Clothing themselves in burlap and throwing ashes on their heads to show their remorse. Yes, Tyre and Sidon will be better off on Judgment Day than you. This is one of several texts that teach us that just as there are degrees of reward for faithful service, 1 Corinthians 3, there are also degrees of punishment for the lost, Revelation 20. If God is just, and he is, then he must punish the more ungodly with more punishment. Luke 12:47, and a servant who knows what the master wants, but isn't prepared and doesn't carry out those instructions will be severely punished. But someone who does not know and then does something wrong will be punished only lightly. Be careful here. Anyone standing before God for punishment for any reason is lost and will be separated from God for eternity. Just to be clear, there are no pleasant spots in the lake of fire, but there are places and forms of more severe punishment. Revelation 20:12, I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God's throne, and the books were opened, including the book of life. And the dead were judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books. If all judgment for the lost were the same, then what purpose would God have in opening the books? There must be a greater judgment for Adolf Hitler than there is for the little old man down the street who tried to live a good life but never trusted in Jesus. Few, if any, Bible commentaries provide insights into exactly what the degrees of punishment might be. For that matter, the only clues we have for degrees of reward focus on the relative values of wood, hay, stubble, and all the way up to gold, silver, and precious stones. If rewards have relative values, then punishments would justly follow suit. God's justness would necessitate this. Make no mistake about it, while we are saved by grace through faith, we will all be judged by our works. This is true at the Bema Seat and at the Great White Throne. At this point, I feel compelled to insert some clarification. The slide does read correctly. We're saved by grace through faith. We'll still be judged by our works. The judgment, though, I'm speaking of is not the judgment to see if you get into heaven. This judgment takes place in heaven. As a matter of fact, both the Bema Seat and the Great White Throne do. But we'll be evaluated by our works. So for the believer, the issue is the Bema Seat or the judgment seat of Christ. What will our rewards be? Not will we get into heaven or not. Hope that helps. Then he told them a story. A rich man had a fertile farm and produced fine crops. He said to himself, what shall I do? I don't have room for my crops. Then he said, I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have enough room to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. then who will get everything you work for? Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. The rich man in this story, commonly known as the rich fool, is called a fool because of his obsession with his own provision for what he thought was the right length of time. His own words, "I'll sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry." The problem with many years is that his time horizon is short by an eternity. Yes, he could feed himself for many years, but that is to ignore his bigger and longer lasting problem. He is lost and could be called before God at any moment. Points to ponder. If we think we are already pretty good people, then we will likely see little reason to worship Him or serve the Lord. Our knowledge of God informs our worship of God. If God is just, and He is, then He must punish the more ungodly with more punishment. This class, and indeed the entire school, is dedicated to helping others see that God is bigger than we think and better than we know. To get to the next video, make a note of the class number for this recording, then search for the next one. Here is a sample. If this video is number L01.1, then the next one is L01.2. And remember to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow on Rumble.